Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next episode of the Safe Bet Show, and it's my absolute pleasure and a great privilege for all of us to welcome President and CEO of the Canadian Gaming Association, double Hall of Famer, and one of the best of us, Mr. Paul Burns. Paul, welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me, Martin. Great to be here.
Well, we're filming, for the record, in what is the US, and I'm deliberately putting emphasis on the US Thanksgiving week. But not many, I would argue, non-Canadians would know that Canada happens to have the same tradition. I've been hanging out with Paul and his gang long enough to have been reminded of it a few times. So, Paul, would you want to tell us a little more about the Canadian tradition? And also the second question of the bet, if I may, related to the first one. Are you guys getting frustrated that your Thanksgiving seems to always coincide and clash with G2E?
Yes, it's actually our new tradition is to go to Las Vegas and have dinner. That's our new Canadian Thanksgiving tradition, at least for some of us in the gaming industry. So it's not always turkey then, but no, it's Canadian Thanksgiving is the first weekend in October, and as you know, for some parts up here, it gets a little cold a little sooner, end of the harvest, all of those other traditions. Not like the start of the Christmas season, and God help us if we started the Christmas season in October in Canada. But no, it is in early October, and we're quite fine with the new tradition of going to Las Vegas. Actually, it seems to work.
And we will come on to talk about good old Las Vegas. I'm very glad to hear that Vegas is the new venue for honoring years-long tradition of the Canadian Thanksgiving. I'd be inclined and happy to put in a good word for you to have a word with the AGA about possibly rescheduling G2E, or perhaps they may want to relocate it to Canada. Best of both worlds. But then I shall digress. Before we come on to talk about your career in our beloved gambling industry, you actually were with government, once having, amongst others, served as policy advisor to the Ontario Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. And in that role, you directed government initiatives in the gaming sector. I suppose you might have been involved with other projects, well, before iGaming hit, figuratively speaking, Ontario. So here comes the question. Was actually, back then at least, working for the government, with the government, different than it would be right now? And if you could also compare it to working with the private sector?
Yeah, it's... I spent most of my early career working as a political advisor, working campaigns and working for ministers and governments, both in the provincial government, Ontario, and our national government, Ottawa. And one of my last roles, because I found something great to be involved with, and that was the gaming industry. In the mid-90s, Ontario was looking to expand gaming opportunities in the province with additional casinos, slots at racetrack program. So I got to do a lot of the policy work. Really enjoyed it. We also created the Alcohol and Gaming Commission when I was in that ministry. It was merging of the Gaming Commission and what was then known as Liquor Licensing Board into one entity to create what is today now the AGCO. So it was a good time bringing greater regulation, but also getting ready to expand gaming in the province. And working on that file, I got the opportunity then to go to work and leave government with one of the proponents that won the right to build casinos in the province at that time. And I actually got to meet a really and work with not for very long, for about a year or so, Mike Rumboltz, who was then head of Anchor Gaming, and Mike had opened the Windsor Casino in his days when he worked for Circus. And getting to know Mike in that part has been great. He's obviously a legend in the gaming industry and a recent inductee into the AGA Hall of Fame, and well-deserved from his days of heading the Gaming Control Board in the 80s to Anchor Gaming to Anchor at that point ran small casinos in Colorado, and that was the model we were trying to follow for small regional casinos in Ontario. And then weirdly, as things go in politics, the government decided after about 11, 12 months that they would give it all to the OLG to run, and thanks the private sector for their service, paid us out an enormous amount of money to go away and turn it over to the OLG. And then 20 years later, they decide that isn't the way to go and hand it back to the private sector. It was a little deja vu all over again. But I've had a lot of fun with the gaming industry and meeting wonderful people like yourself and others from around the world. And it's always been a fun industry, and that's some days it doesn't feel like work. But it's been great to advocate for this industry. And it's, but I've had a lot of fun with the association and being able to do some good things on behalf of everybody. Because in Canada, the gaming industry and politics and government are a bit intertwined. So it's understanding government and that's why a lot of us who have been to the business, in the gaming business, have actually spent some time in government.
And we should be, and we are extremely grateful for having you, because you've always been a very eloquent advocate for us, not only in Ontario, wider Canada, but the whole wild world. And I promise I will shut up about Hall of Fame in a second, but clearly Ontario seems to be a great breeding ground for Hall of Famers, at least when it comes to SBC, but perhaps there may be some parallels with hockey as well. Las Vegas, I promised the audience that we would briefly talk about the Sin City, very fresh of this week's Formula One weekend. Everything seemed to have gone well, at least from Friday onwards, not necessarily Thursday. And following your government career and a stopover in a leading public affairs firm, you indeed have held a variety of positions in the gambling industry, straddling Ontario and Las Vegas. We'll talk about Ontario and Canada in a second, but no. Any funny what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas stories that you can share with the audience?
Oh, there's been a few over the years. That's for sure. And maybe probably should stay there. It was, I had the opportunity to spend some time working there. After I left government and the casino initiative had taken away, the company I was working for actually had an interest in the PT's chain in Las Vegas, working with the Boakley brothers, who Phil and Tom started PT pubs. This is so a Canadian real estate company that was entering the gaming business wanted to invested there, was licensed, and so it was that was a nice opportunity, because in that point in time in the late 90s, Las Vegas was growing at an enormous rate. Bellagio opened Mandalay Bay, the Venetian, and in building lots of pubs across the valley. So that was a unique experience for me, getting exposure to the Nevada Gaming Control Board and working in that environment, doing a lot of the compliance work for the company, and it was fun. It was a unique experience. I wasn't living there full time. I was just commuting a lot at that point in time. But it was good. It was a great experience, and watching Las Vegas kind of grow at that point in time, it was fun to watch. A lot of the only in Vegas stories, and the death of Benny Binion and the silver buried in the desert, and Oscar Goodman before he was mayor representing the family. There's lots of unique Vegas stories, and so it's all been kind of fun to witness over the years. But the gaming business in Canada has now taken a good turn, and there's lots going on. So it's been a great market here, and growing, and lots of great Canadian innovators in the space.
Well, if this was a testimony that I couldn't let Paul get away with sidestepping, and very nimbly so, my question, but I will let him get away with it, not only because we happen to be very good friends. The Canadian Gaming Association, you were instrumental in launching it back in 2005. So I suppose we're, a year and a half from the 20th anniversary. Very impressive indeed. And you went on to become its boss in 2018. So what are the key objectives of the association? Who are the members? What's the current policy focus?
Well, we're built on pillars of education, advocacy, and collaboration, and that means we're working to educate government decision makers, stakeholders about our industry, its potential. We tend to try and bring industry and our stakeholders together and collaborate, looking for good public policy solutions as we move, looking to solve issues of the day or address new challenges for like opening of markets. We definitely are promoting a regulated gaming market and our focus has always been on telling the industry stories, a bit in terms of understanding the collective nature of the efforts that provincial governments have put into responsible gaming, which is some of the most leading work in the world that's been done here over the years, decades, and really kind of explain that gaming is a great industry in this country. The recent opening of the Ontario iGaming market allowed a lot of great Canadian companies to have their first Canadian customers and work in the space. Many had left. I mean, as we all know, that Poker Stars was founded here in the Greater Toronto area, had moved to Isle of Man because that's where the regulation was, and it wasn't here. We've seen companies like GeoComply, who world leader in geo location services, founded in Vancouver and finally get to do business at home in Canada. And we've also been home to many others. And Strive is out in Vancouver right now. There's a great big node of gaming technology companies, Fans Unite and others. We've been great innovators and been at the forefront of the iGaming industry. The Mitch Garbers, who led Caesars Interactive and Party. We've had this role as Canadians. We've got great technology talent, and trying to explain to government this you're building a bigger industry here, and regulation in some cases was the last piece of the puzzle that everybody needed to sort of say, I can stay here, I can do business. That PokerStars has employed over 500 people for over 20 years, but they finally put their name on the door 2 years ago, and that was important to know that's the role the country and the innovators that are here that do good work. And we have a great mix of government support and access to capital markets and great talent. And so we're out telling these stories to policymakers to say that there's governments have often seen gaming as, it's just how much money can I make? And it's like, hang on a second. There's really good wages. A casino employee in Ontario's average wage is like $68,000 with benefits on top of that. It's there's careers in the gaming industry. I'm trying to explain that and understand that it's not just a hospitality job that can come and go. No, these are very good jobs in communities where there's some of the best jobs in many cases, and have career opportunities, and it's so that's important for people to understand the context of which gaming exists, because often they cut to issues that make nice headlines, but often miss the context. And that's our biggest part, is being able to say, no, you have to understand the whole picture when it comes to the gaming industry and what it can do for, great employers and communities, great companies that have give back to the communities they operate in, but creating great opportunities for employment. And, some of the recent iGaming jobs, the average wage for the iGaming positions have been created in Ontario over $100,000 a year because they're good technology jobs. These are important stories, and to showcase the companies and the people behind them is what we're trying to do.
Well, absolutely. A lot of great points there. I suppose the one that folks tend to forget about, is the fact that GeoComply PokerStars are actually Canadian companies by origin and in their heart of hearts. So thanks for reminding us all. Besides leading the Canadian gambling industry on the policy side of things, you've also helped a great deal to expand the industries, as in the Canadian industries annual conference, the Canadian Gaming Summit, of course, owned by our host, SBC, these days. So what does the summit have in store for us all in the years to come?
Well, it's we're thrilled with our new partnership with SBC. Them being able to the Canadian Gaming Association, as owners of the Canadian Gaming Summit, that was not our core business anymore. And maybe it took a pandemic to figure that out. But I think we were on that track even prior to then understand that there's others that are better at doing these things. And so when we sought and get out of the business, a number of companies came forward to bid, and the board of directors was impressed with SBC and the way they approached keeping a Canadian show for the Canadian industry. And so it's been terrific in leveraging, obviously, all of the SBC's expertise that they bring, using exclusively gaming conferences around the world. In big part was, they have a great media platform for us, and that reach around the world is also being able to find ways that we can take Canadian companies abroad and to help them reach new markets and expose themselves to new companies. And that's something that we're going to continue to work on with SBC, because it is being able to take advantage of that global platform. So Canadian Gaming Summit will still focus on issues that are near and dear to the Canadian gaming industry and topical in this country, because we've got a really diverse offering of products from the VLT networks that exist in 8 provinces, just over 100 and change in terms of casino floors, a vibrant charitable gaming industry still in Canada with bingo. So there's lots of dynamic to the industry. So the summit is a place for the Canadian gaming industry to get together once a year. Sometimes it's a little bit like a family reunion because we all get to see each other and do that. But it's a very good it's a good vehicle for us to tell our stories again and to also showcase what's great about the Canadian industry. And so SBC has embraced it and leaned in, and we're thankful and looking forward to that continued relationship.
Go SBC. I might be biased, but I do mean it. And on a serious note, I do appreciate the cordial vibe of the Canadian event, and it does feel to some extent like bringing Vegas to a more cordial place. Onto the Ontario regulation. It's certainly proven itself as being one of the most successful ones on the North American continent, if not even beyond, since its launch in April 2020. And we got quite the expert, Mr. Paul Burns, with us here today, who I'm sure wouldn't mind walking us through a potted history of evolution of that piece of iGaming legislation and regulation in the run-up to the launch, and then even more importantly, what came next, so since the launch.
Yeah, it's something that I think I was first quoted in media talking about the need to regulate iGaming in Canada in 2006, because it was around and available and growing, and it continued to grow. And others, our friend Mr. Ross, who represented some of the offshore operators, walked around government saying, we're prepared to pay tax and be regulated if you do it. And at the same time, one of the things that we started working on in about 2008-9 was to change the laws on sports betting in Canada, because it was clear Canadians could access the single event, full sports book opportunities in the online space. They couldn't get it at home. We had sports lottery products with 3-game parlays, not great odds. So people looking for more sports betting went to the internet and found it. And they sure as enough found it in big numbers. We estimated that the offshore, the total wager was in excess of 5, 6, and probably about 7 billion by the time a year in total spend was heading to the offshore. And then beyond the broader legal market was probably almost double that again, because we had long examples of organized crime and bookmaking operations. And then they married those with the internet, and it became even higher volume for them. But being able to then showcase the fact that there was a vast difference, and the reason was because of online gaming. And as we got, governments got more attuned to what was occurring in the world and seeing regulation. Obviously, the conversation in Ontario started probably in earnest, and we did an event at the Canadian High Commission at Canada House in London before ICE in 2018 to talk about the need for and the opportunity potentially is for creating a greater regulated market, as the AGCO then began its own consultation at that point to evaluate what could be done and what it could do. That took that to government, and then government in 2019 made a decision that they would then explore the opportunity to create a regulated market and committed to that. And that was a terrific moment, only because it just it led us to getting a first provincial government to attack the gray market and begin to create a fully regulated market. And this is, as you know, Martin, the Canadian governments and provincial governments' involvement has also led to a lot of work around responsible gaming and very robust programs around the regulated market. And I'm saying, well, yes, that's great. It's wonderful you've got these world-class programs, but you're leaving a whole segment of the market untouched. And that's something that we need to regulate at all. We need greater consumer protection. So it's a very difficult, decision as the government's got into this, is to figure out what exactly they needed to do. And that was the great point of that time.
Well, 5-minute warning, 3 rapid questions, hopefully before I give Paul his 60 seconds to shine even more. We just talked about the Ontario iGaming regulation, because lately it's been marred with a little bit of controversy, because there are new rules around the use or the ban, the use of celebrities for advertising purposes, with certain exceptions. So where do you stand on all this, Paul?
What we had said to the AGCO when they rolled out the draft standard was that we wanted them to consult with the industry in advance of writing a standard. But when they put out the standard, we said, listen, let's make evidence-based decisions. Let's take a look at what the research says. Because a lot of people are drawing inferences from other markets and other parts of the world to say, well, the UK, look at what's happened. And I'm like, sports betting is probably less than 10% of the gaming market in Canada. And so it's not 50. It's not 100 years old. There's sports books companies older than Canada in the UK. The history is decades on. So to draw straight lines is impossible. It's a very different market. So we want evidence-based research. So now we're in another round of consultation with the AGCO about compliance guidelines, because as an outcome standards-based regulator, they're very vague. And so the industry is looking for more certainty on how to comply. And maybe we can find more clarity on what we can do and not do, and look at what the effect is, and take a look at research together and make decisions that are done with evidence, and not because there was a lot of nasty headlines and let's make something go away. A lot of people, that's the gaming industry is littered with good intentions, where we get programs or policies that were designed to make headlines go away, but not actually meant to achieve anything or produce any effective results. And so we need to take that time, and that's what we're asking them to do. And that's what they've agreed to with this consultation now on a compliance guide, as a better understanding. And some of the things that the CGA is now taking on is we're going to be, launching a larger player health initiative to showcase the work our industry does. That's the biggest thing. We do a lot of wonderful work, and so being able to talk about it more, to be able to work on some projects around guiding principles for the industry on RG, and we're going to look at a national advertising standard, because a lot of the advertising oversight that's in media in Canada is through industry self-regulation. There's lots of rules out there, and the fact is that greater regulation brings greater consumer protection, and that's one of the things that we want to keep talking about, because people that have been critical have often forgotten that there's a large unregulated market out there, but there's no consumer protection, nothing preventing minors from accessing sites, and there's now a very robust regulatory regime in Ontario that's doing all of those things, and has produced tremendous results. Minors can't get access. There's no operator has been even and sanctioned in any way for creating advertising that seems to targeting minors. So I think we just want to have conversations to make sure that we get the best outcomes, and let's do some evidence-based decision making.
Amen to that. Our brief crystal ball glazing exercise. That's what I'm trying to say. The other provinces, I appreciate that we could be talking about those for hours, but we got limited time allowance in this podcast. So Alberta, BC, who may follow in terms of regulating iGaming?
Alberta is the only one so far that has made a statement to say that they would be looking at creating a regulated iGaming strategy. It was the recently elected Smith government in Alberta has put in the mandate for the minister responsible for the Alcohol, Gaming and Liquor Cannabis Corporation to create a strategy for rolling out iGaming. And so we're in the early days of that process, but that's at least a conversation that's now begun. We know that the gaming regulators in British Columbia would like to talk about regulating iGaming. And in Quebec, there's an active coalition talking to Quebecers talking to Quebecers about why regulated gaming is a good thing and the need. And there's lots of, the public is using these sites, and to deny the fact that that's happening and why government wouldn't want to bring oversight and a level playing field for gaming operators in Canada is beyond me. But those are the three. Those three provinces represent 50% of the population of the country, and with Ontario, then you've pretty much got those are the four jurisdictions that are going to matter in the country, and enforcement. And everybody's cranky about seeing active gray market operators in their jurisdictions. Well, regulating a marketplace, as more provinces begin to regulate, the easier it will be to keep unregulated operators out of the marketplace. And that's one thing we need to understand too, is that by greater joining the cause, creating opportunities, it makes it easier for everybody.
Absolutely. And to make this Canadian, tout à fait, because we're talking about Quebec. Finally, our friend already mentioned, Mr. Troy Ross, he would never forgive us, and I'd be remiss in my duties as a hockey fan if I didn't ask you whether you think the mighty Toronto Maple Leafs, the Leafs, will win their next cup by the time of the centenary of the latest one. So where do we stand on 2067?
Yeah, 2067. We can only hope. Really, it's as a long-suffering Maple Leaf fan, and it's fun to watch them play sometimes, and sometimes it isn't. Usually the playoffs. So we can only hope. But as we can still. It's great hockey to watch right now. There was many years when I was growing up that it wasn't, and Game of Inch is ever the optimist. We've been conditioned, as Toronto Maple Leaf fans to brace for disappointment at times. So we can only hope that this is the year, but we will see. It's a long way to go.
We should wish them the best of luck. From the sound of it, they might have cancelled the Cup parade in week 3. Out of total respect for Paul, I'm not wearing my Bruins kit. It's not only because they shamefully lost to the Lightning last night. 60 seconds for you, Paul, to convey your key messages, please, be it about the Leafs or rather be it about the Canadian gaming industry. It's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I'm a big champion for the Canadian gaming industry, and I think there's great opportunities for companies trying to make look at this market. If you're looking to locate in North America as a launching pad, there's no better place than Canada. From access to talent, a very competitive dollar, and favorable tax rates in a lot of jurisdictions to create and locate your businesses. So we're a good gaming jurisdiction and one of the better ones in the world, and so I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be their advocate and and to join you, Martin, on programs like this to talk about it. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
And we all appreciate you. This has been great fun, ladies and gentlemen. The latest episode of my Safe Bet Show. Thank you very much to the one and only Paul Burns. I'm sure he will want to come back by 2067. He'll get it there before the Leafs might do. But on a serious note, thanks again. My name is Martin Lycka, and I shall see you next time.